I am a daughter of my parents, who were both probably immigrants, English, Irish, and I was born in Pretoria and lived there, educated there. And then I went to Natal University when I was very young and wanting to do medicine, and I was too young. And I fell into the ceramic studio by accident, and I thought, oh my God, this is actually all I want. The smell, the feel, the touch, the whole essence of this thing was mine. And it resonated with something so deep inside me that I really believe it's probably from way back. I started the first studio for children of teaching in this country. I borrowed money from my father. I bought tables and chairs. I rented a little apartment. And I had the most wonderful, thriving teaching studio for children for a long time. So that was quite a nice thing. But undercurrent of all of this, at university, I had met the man I was going to marry. So he dominated actually everything. And we got engaged at the airport. He was going to Paris to go and further his education. And I went back to Pretoria. So I thought, no, this is not good. I have to go. So I had an exhibition of batik, which I'd learnt in Port Elizabeth, very bad, but nevertheless, they allowed me to open an exhibition at the Arts Association in Pretoria. And because no one had ever seen this medium, which was not good, I must tell you, I sold everything. And I bought a one-way ticket to Paris. So off I went. And that was the beginning of a love affair with France. We got married in Fontainebleau, and that was beautiful. And then we lived there, and eventually John had to graduate. I went to England. I was pregnant with Chantal, and then we came home on a big boat with this tiny baby, a small car which my father had given us, and we started life living in Pretoria. But wherever I've been, I've always had a studio, which was wonderful because it kept me on my toes, teaching and allocating information to others. My life with John was great. We had a great life. We had 4 babies. We came to live in the Cape because he became the marketing director. And once again, I set up a ceramic studio. And then before I was even 40, John was killed. And all my life just went into a tailspin. It was terrible. Had this beautiful house. The kids were all established in schools. They were still very young. I went back to university because I didn't want to talk to anybody. And I went to UNISA and I did a BA Fine Arts Honours. I had the newspaper in the kitchen one day. I saw a little advert which said, pottery teacher for Herschel. And I got straight in the car and I went to the woman and I said, I'm your man. And we went over a period of 10 years from 3 children to a huge studio and 170 children. And in the middle of it, and I'd now been alone for 8 years, I was introduced to Sean. We lived in Ireland for 5 years. No ceramics, but I registered at the School of Textiles. And all of this actually comes round to my Stellenbosch University degree now, because I learned skills drawing with the sewing machine. So I did these huge portraits. And they were very happy with them. No one had done that before at the school. And they invited me to exhibit. So the day I arrived in London at Trafalgar Circus, there I stood with my things and I thought, oh my God, I'm exhibiting in London, which sounded very, very grand. Wasn't. There were lots of people and lots of people exhibiting, but I was there. So that was wonderful. And that continued. And then I got breast cancer, so we had to come home. And that was also a learning curve, another learning curve. So it was one learning curve after the other. But nevertheless, I continued teaching, doing ceramics, but doing multimedia now because I was getting pretty good. And that continued until we sold and we came to live here. And we hadn't been here more than 3 years when Sean died. And I thought, oh, what the hell am I going to do now? And my very good friend Paul Murray came to see me. He loved both John Lapping and Sean. And he said to me, what are you going to do? And I said, I have no idea. And he said, you're going back to university, you're going to do your master's. And I said, that is ridiculous. He said, no, it's not. He said, it's amazing. So that's how I went to apply. And I applied at Stellenbosch, and they accepted me. I didn't know what to do, quite frankly. And then COVID hit us. And with COVID, the first thing I saw on the 26th of March, Modi throwing Indians out of Delhi. These were the people on the streets who really didn't have any money. They were itinerants. It threw me completely. And I went to my sewing machine and I took a long, 5-meter long piece of cloth and I just sewed their faces of people walking. And when I'd finished, I took it out and I drew feet walking along the top. And so in April, I think it was April, a month later, when I was requested, you know, all students are requested now to present to this precious group of people who are sitting watching, and my professor included, and I presented this, and there was just a stunned silence. And then the other professor said to me, this is amazing. And then Elizabeth immediately phoned me, unusual. And she said, Rosemary, brilliant. But you know what is behind this? Your extreme vulnerability. And that is what I want you to capture. Well, you know, it's fine to say you're vulnerable. And it's fine you look and see people who are vulnerable. But how do you write that? How do you know? And the entire thesis that I wrote was how to find it and how to find what then became called a dialect without utterance. In other words, a language that you don't use your mouth, you don't use words, you see. I feel I identify very deeply with suffering. I think it's probably my own journey, I don't know. But nevertheless, I have a deep empathetic response to humanity. And I became very involved with what was going on in the country and in the world. Then for the next month, every night I watched Christiane Amanpour, because, you know, we thought COVID was going to go away in 3 weeks. I watched her interviewing people, intellectuals, academics, medical people, people off the street. What does it mean, this COVID? And I drew them, and those faces are the result of that. So those are all literally interviews of people whom she interviewed on that for that next month. So those 40 nights, those 40 people. Looking at the concept of COVID and the fear that is directly related to it, you wonder how we're going to go forward, because where is hope in the middle of this? Because with World War I and II, people had no hope, but at the same time, they knew eventually it would stop. But with COVID, you don't know, you can't touch the enemy, because your nearest and dearest could be the one who gives it to you and could bring it home. And you might pass it on to someone you really hate, but quite accidentally. So it's a very tenuous thing, this business of an untouchable infection. And I thought the one way you can have hope is by ritual, because ritual offers hope. And even if it's in your head, even if you're making it up, even if you make up a god, you somehow hand it over and expect something back. I watched a lot of programs on television, rituals where they revealed mummies and the rituals that were involved in their dying. And for me, each and every one was about hope. Even when they killed somebody, it was about hope for the next life or the next generation. Part of the ritual, there's always liquid. There's either blessed water, like the water from the Ganges, or there's urine that has come from the community that will help that person who is going to die to pass on. And there's the blood of a victim. It's all part of a ritual, and all of that liquid is put into a vessel. And that vessel is known as a libation vessel. And I thought, that's what I want. I'm going to start making vessels. And I kept thinking, but it's not about perfect. This is about not perfect. This is about a very ugly situation. These vessels are not going to hold any hope, really. They are going to be disintegrating. So although each vessel I made obeys the rules of the symbolism and also all the artifacts that are related to a vessel, like a spout and like a handle, like a neck and like a body, that's where it ends. I could then impregnate all forms of disintegration of materials and organic and inorganic matter into the clay. So now I was really making objects that were in fact about the disease. People were being cremated. You know, ambulances and hearses, they couldn't fill them. They were so full they didn't know what to do with them. They didn't know where to put bodies, so they were just burning them. And there was smoke. And I thought, smoke is very relevant. And bones. And then I got involved with the bones, because the bones gave me the calcium I needed to put into my pots. So, and it made me ash, and it made me a glaze. So now I have done the full circle of what it is, and how is hope, and how all of us are embedded into hope and disintegration. I think it was a period of my life, a period of adjustment to Sean's death, John Lapping's death, COVID, my aloneness, my abandoned sensation that I have. It's gone. I'm free. I feel amazing. Truly. I feel, oh my God, I'm okay. Which is a remarkable thing to do. It was less than therapy. Throughout my journey with this master's, for me it was always about the practice-led research, which was the practical, and the thesis. And it was so intellectually divided. And that was right up until almost the very end, when I was writing my thesis. And I started to see that my thesis was becoming an artwork. And for some real strange reason, I saw it like a book. I saw it with a spine, and I saw the unfolding of my, I hesitate to use the word wisdom, because I certainly do not feel wise, but my personal wisdom, unfolding of information. I saw it like paging through it from the start to the finish. And it was now one. Suddenly, my work and my thesis were one. And suddenly my practical work became the thesis, and my thesis became my practical work. I went into the garage, and there, of course, are all my papers and my stuff, and both tables were still up. And they had all the canvas, which I put on always on my tables, because it's the best way to work. And suddenly I thought, these are the pages. These are my pages. So the man who made my stands, a man called Julian, I phoned him and I said, Julian, I want a spike. And that night he arrived with my spike. But by now I'd cut all my work up into like landscape images. And he brought them, and I made holes and I spiked. But then I thought, no, I need a spine. So I used clay, almost like a spinal column, which is crazy. I don't know where it came from. The idea, I don't know where it came from. But as it built up, initially it was such an intellectual thing. And slowly, if you look at it, it suddenly just collapses into like, it's done, it's finished. And it was a very beautiful metaphor for me of everything that I had done. What I can tell you now is that 40 people applied. 15 were accepted for the 2020 intake. And this year, when I graduate, I'm the only one of that group who will graduate, because the other students were all young and they just couldn't cope with COVID. Now, when I look back on it, it is because I stuck to it and I did not let up. And I think that's how I managed to get graduating now. The thing about teaching is that you have to give your students sufficient information about the medium, that they use it in a way like I'll explain it to you. When you go to ballet lessons, you start off with all your little frilly bits and your little feet and your thing. You poop scared. But as soon as you know that intuitively you put your feet correctly, you do your little fingers, and the moment the music starts, you don't have to think about it. You just dance.